Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat being used to lure American kids as young as 14 years old to smuggle migrants across the border, promising hundreds of or even thousands of dollars to pick up migrants after they've crossed into the U.S. But the road to that fast cash can have minors facing felonies that carry sentences of 10 years in prison or $250,000 fines. A top Border Patrol agent telling the Wall Street Journal that a massive 90% of drivers admit to being recruited through social media. Joining us now is Christopher Olivarez with the Texas Department of Public Safety. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Natasha. Good evening.
How often is this tactic successful on teens and young adults?
Well, it's been very successful, very effective. And of course, when you have, the flow of people coming across the border, with that, you're going to have criminal organizations in Mexico, smuggler organizations that are going to want to profit and expand their criminal network throughout the U.S. So what better way than to target a much larger audience by using social media platforms such as TikTok, Snapchat, WhatsApp. And that's what we've been seeing. That's what we encounter our DPS troopers when we try to disrupt some of these human smuggling cases. And it's not only young adults, it's not only adults as well, or people from out of town. I mean, we're starting to see that as well. People from out of town, from other larger metropolitan areas, even out of state, that are making the trip to the border to smuggle people because they are being recruited through social media, but also juveniles. We've encountered juveniles as young as 12 years old that are involved in human smuggling and, leading, our troopers or law enforcement on high-speed chases because they're involved in human smuggling. So it's a very important issue, and I think it's an issue that we really need to spread more awareness of so that we can actually, let our young adults know, our juveniles, our kids know that not to get involved with these organizations because there are deadly consequences to that, not just as far as you mentioned earlier in that intro, as far as, penalties and felony charges, but also deadly consequences as well with some of these high-speed chases that we're seeing.
That is wild to me. You're saying that kids as young as 12 years old are actually behind the wheel picking up migrants after they cross the border?
Yes, we actually had a case several weeks ago. We had several juveniles. One was actually reported as a runaway out of San Antonio, Texas. They actually traveled to Eagle Pass, Texas, which is about an hour, 2 hours away from San Antonio, which has been, where we're seeing the majority of these human smuggling cases. And they actually were involved in a high-speed chase with our DPS troopers. They actually crashed. Luckily, they survived, as well as the migrants that they were smuggling survived. But one of the juveniles that was a passenger was 12 years old. And that just goes to show you the extent of how young these juveniles are being involved or being recruited with human smuggling, because they see these images on social media where these criminal organizations are enticing, or they're showing large stacks of money. They see it as an easy way to make fast cash, but they do not realize the severe and also deadly consequences behind it.
Do they understand exactly what is happening here? Do you know what are they told on social media that they will be doing? Are they told you are going to be picking up an illegal migrant and transporting them and may face 10 years in jail or hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines, and you are connecting directly with a cartel to do so? What are they actually being told that they are working on?
Well, I mean, these organizations are using deceptive, recruiting tactics. I mean, they don't tell them, and they're also very smart in how they do it. They won't come out and say, well, we need drivers to smuggle, illegal immigrants. They'll show images of vehicles and people inside those vehicles. They'll show stacks of money, but they're not going to come out directly and say, we need drivers for human smuggling. They'll say drivers want it, and those that are interested, they can send a direct message, whether it be through TikTok, Snapchat, or WhatsApp. And that's how they start that process. And they'll communicate by using those social media platforms throughout the whole process until those individuals are smuggled from one point to another. And we've seen that with some of the arrests that we made, because one thing that's very important to us is trying to, capture those images or capture that data from those phones when we're actually able to arrest these smugglers. And for the most part, these individuals are communicating with these criminals through social media platforms, because there is encrypted messaging. They're able to delete the messages as well. So that's why they're able to use those platforms, and it makes it very, very challenging for us as law enforcement to try to detect some of these individuals. But it just really shows the extent and how we need to make it a priority as parents to talk to our children, especially friends, to let them know that this is the reality of the situation right now, not to get involved with these dangerous criminals, because yes, it may seem very enticing to make fast cash, but there are deadly consequences behind it, getting involved with these organizations.
Oh, absolutely. If a kid as young as 12 or 14 is caught smuggling migrants, can you speak to the impact on the rest of their lives? I mean, is there any leniency for someone who may have been told this was okay or may not even have been fully aware of what they were participating in?
Well, of course, they're going to, first off, they're going to have a juvenile record, for human smuggling. It's a felony charge, especially if they evade from law enforcement. You look at another felony charge for evading. But they're not told these consequences. They're not told that's just going to ruin their life, especially in the future. if they try to get back on track, try to look for a job, this is going to have a serious impact on them. But also in some cases, why these criminal organizations are using juveniles, because in some cases, depending on the county, there is less severe penalties for those juveniles. They may be released that same day to a parent, and they're doing the following day again. So they think it as, well, we can continue doing this, no consequences behind it. And that's where they start building up that record, that criminal record, and it's going to affect them long term. In some cases, they do prosecute, but in some cases they don't. So that's why it's an ever-ending cycle when we're talking about juveniles. But again, as I mentioned, it's very important that we explain to them as parents, friends, loved ones, that this does have a detrimental impact to their record as far as as they move on in life. So very important, again, as I mentioned, if they see something out of the ordinary, especially on social media, anything suspicious, to report it to law enforcement so we can actually look into it. And that's what we've been very successful in that effort, because now we have more dedicated resources to monitor social media, to gather intel from that.
All right, Christopher Olivarez, I really appreciate you illuminating this topic for us. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.